Welcome back, everybody, to our series on Plato's The Republic. We are on to Book 9. We're going to take a look into the tyrant's soul here
That's
today.
right. Deep look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deep look.
So, Dr. Jim, welcome back. Always good to be
Good.
here with you.
Good. Glad to be here talking about sticking it to the man with Pat Flynn.
Yeah, that's yeah.
That is.
So we have some. We'll tease it at the end. I don't want to
We'll
get
tease
too
it. Yeah,
sidetracked.
we'll tease
Yeah,
it.
but we have an interesting idea for a new series after this one.
The philosophy for the people is coming in hot.
It's gonna get spicier and spicier.
And the for the people part is going to be big now. Right?
Yeah. But
I can imagine the T-shirts for this one too.
Yeah, we will get some T-shirts mocked up at some point. So yeah, anyway, we're getting close to the end here.
We're
Jim.
almost done, man.
I'm really happy with this series. It's been a ton of fun. I hope that the gentle listeners have found it valuable. So if so, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Once this is all done, I think we're going to do one or two sort of just overview, summary thought episodes, and then I'll put like a big page together on my Substack and blog where we'll have all the episodes.
I love it.
Just like in one nice place for people as a resource. So keep an eye out for that.
I'll have something like that on my website.
Yeah,
we can get them all together. I think this has been grand, and this is kind of how we're going to proceed now, right? On philosophy for the people, a lot of this stuff, right? It's kind of long, these sustained series, right?
Right, and then we'll just kind of like make these nice little products, if you will, and free for the people.
Free.
It's for the people.
Because it's for the people.
Indeed.
Why do we labor the way we do, Pat? For the people.
For the people. So please, we'll do some Q&A at the end. So if you guys have any relevant questions, relevant isn't like related to the Republic, let us know, or like somewhere in the ballpark at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes on in the Republic, right? You could have like fitness questions based on the Republic.
You could. So we'll be a little stretchy, but let's dive into it, Jim. Book 9, start us off here.
All right, so we did book 8, and book 8, we've books 6 and 7 we're down studying the soul, right? We're in the microcosm, and then in book 8 we went back up to talk about the polity, and we mainly spoke about the different types of city, different types of constitution, the aristocratic constitution, the timocratic constitution, the oligarchic constitution, the democratic constitution, and the tyrannical. It's not even a constitution, tyrannical state, right? As in state of affairs. And then of course there is mention made of the corresponding, analogy, the analogy to be drawn to the soul, right? There's also an aristocratic soul. There's the timocratic soul, the oligarchic soul, et cetera, et cetera. You don't get much of a discussion of the tyrannical soul in book 8, right? And whereas book 9, the early parts of it are dedicated to a much more in-depth discussion of the tyrannical soul. This is Plato saying, this is important. Listen up, kids, right? You don't want this, right? We're
gonna need a full scroll for this one. Yeah,
we're gonna have full scroll for this one. Yeah. And he's gonna buy the paper on that one, right? Right. And so they had their own supply chain issues, right? And so okay. I almost went.
We almost lost it. We're back on track.
You're back on track. I was going to say no. I'm saying it was no less an accident for Athens as it is today.
Indeed.
Anyway, so and so we in book 9 now we go back to talk about this corresponding souls in greater depth about these in the analogy with the constitutions of the city. Okay.
Right.
Another thing I want us to have in mind as we get into book 9 is I mentioned back when we talked about the cave, how for the overall stated project of the Republic, Plato is having Socrates dig a deeper and deeper hole for himself, because the whole point of the book, on the surface at least, is for Socrates to show that justice is good in and of itself and for its consequences. And the theme of the middle books is it does not appear to be as such, right? It appears to be intrinsically very difficult and arduous and painful. Lots of looking at the sun and burning your retina. And it also
will probably get you mobbed at some point.
But get you mobbed, get you killed at some point, right? So it becomes very unclear that it's intrinsically worthwhile, and it's becoming clear that it's practically worthwhile, and then its achievability in the city has already been kind of thrown out, like we've given up on that.
Okay. Right.
So he's really made it. He is not straw manning anything, right? Plato is steel manning this thing, right? Okay, so now in book 9, we're going to take a step forward to seeing how the grand strategy is going to like unfold in Socrates' favor, at least, you know, in Plato's perspective. Okay. So we start out with a discussion of the tyrannical man.
Right.
Okay. The tyrannical self.
And we begin by trying to examine and unpack the nature and number of the appetites, which I thought is always fascinating.
It was interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And that tend to peer out in sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And so this for me is the big takeaway in that early part is the tyrannical soul, right, is the person who has lost the distinction between dream and awakeness, right? Like they and you know Plato gets, or Socrates gets pretty explicit, like, you know, we dream about all sorts of nasty stuff that we would never do in the real world.
That's right.
And we can stuff it back, right? And like Freud read this book, by the way, right? We can stuff it back. Freud too has a tripartite division of the soul, right? But we can stuff it down and keep it at bay, right? Because we know that that's not real; it's just dream. Whereas the tyrant has lost that distinction. Okay, and this is actually Aristotle.
His entire life is just one giant nocturnal pollution.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It really is. It's like one giant like really bad wet dream, but where there was like other species of animal involved. Right?
It's bad and murder, right?
Yeah, and murder. Yeah, you know, it was like bad. It's like, you know, it's Friday the 13th, but you like it. You know?
Right.
Okay, right. So this dovetails well with kind of an explanation this Aristotle gives the Nicomachean Ethics, where vice is a state of ignorance, where one has lost any sense of what is really good for him and is constantly doing what is bad for him in a permanent state of drunkenness or illusion, or delusion. And so I think that's really what Plato's up to here too, is to say, look, what the tyrant, the vicious person is the person who has become so enslaved by their desires that they can't distinguish between what they want anymore and what would be good for them to have. Like that there is no distinction there, and that is as if to live in a dream world, right? Which I think is important. And we think of like all the themes throughout Plato, especially in the Republic, where we're being asked to wake up and remember something. And so like he's trying to arouse us out of the dream state of our viciousness to remember, right, what the real distinction is between what we want and what is, right? What we want and what is really good. Okay. And I think like this becomes, I think, the fundamental critique of the tyrannical soul. And it's interesting that like Plato doesn't seem to think he needs a terribly sophisticated argument against this. It's to say, look, hey, adults, do you want to live in the real world, or do you want to live in your own self-imposed matrix?
Right. And there is a strong, let me know if I'm getting too far ahead, but there is a strong appeal to experience here, especially philosophical experience of saying, you know, it's kind of like he doesn't just rely on that. He does advance an argument later, but he's like, the philosopher is going to know this best, right? Because they've kind of tasted, you know, the pleasures and the honor, like that kind of comes to most people through most of life. But then they get the real pleasure, right, of being a philosopher, the love of wisdom, of seeking the good as such. And so, you know, it's this experience is just going to be naturally enlightening, and it's just going to be so obvious that this is the better way to live, right?
What I find interesting there is that the list you just gave there of, you know, the pleasures of the timocratic life, the timocratic soul, the oligarchic soul, and the philosophical soul, the aristocratic soul. No, the tyrant doesn't make that list. Okay, because like what overwhelmingly defines the tyrant's experience is not pleasure but regret. Okay, and this is important too. Like I'm reading Plato through Aristotle here, but here we are. Right. Is for Aristotle, for something to be pleasant is for it not to be regretted. Okay, if you had it back, you would do it again. Right. There was something to be unpleasant, to be painful, is that it's regretted. Right. That if you had it back, you would not want that to happen again. Right. Okay. And so the tyrant is constantly in a state of regret. Like he's constantly woeing the, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ate the whole thing kind of moment. Right. I can't believe I, whatever the sick dream I had, I can't believe I really did it. Right.
Yeah.
It's like the tyrant is defined not by pleasure, but by regret.
Yeah. And this is, I'm glad you brought this out, because this is profound, right?
It's only a life that could be regretted.
And it can foster a sort of resentment, I think, you know, to bring in Nietzsche, right? Like it's really is a miserable wretch, this person, like truly miserable, and a sort of misery that loves company in a sense. And not only that, but Plato makes a really important distinction at one point, Socrates. We got to make sure we're always clear about that, right? Where there is a difference between, sort of relieving an appetite and true pleasure, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't think that just satisfying an appetite is pleasure. Like, yeah, that's removal of pain or displeasure to a certain extent, but true pleasure, that's what you get when you become a philosopher, right? So it's not this perfect yin and yang thing for Socrates. It's like, no, yeah, you satisfy your appetites, but that's not pleasure properly considered, right? That's just relieving an appetite or satisfying an appetite. True pleasure comes when you become a philosopher, right?
Yeah. And so the way I read what goes on in 9 here is, basically Plato is having Socrates say, look, no one takes the tyrannical soul seriously. No one is recommending this, right? That, like we can find, legitimate grown-ups who are recommending to you the timocratic soul, right? Who are recommending to you the oligarchic soul and the philosophical soul. So Plato, Socrates, I'm going to have some kind of serious argument against them, right?
Right.
But I don't think I need an argument against a life of woe and regret.
Right. I mean, look at, I think, have you ever seen the movie Monk? Remember, remember maybe the episode with Dale the whale?
Yeah.
Like the super morbidly abused guy who just constantly regretting his eating. Now, at the same time, like, he is kind of the evil genius aspect too, who like kind of works hard in a sense. So just remove all that, right? And then you've got Dale the whale.
Terrence Malick's film Night of Cups is great on this.
I haven't seen that one.
It's a great example of someone it's suffused with, trying to distinguish dream from reality, right? And it's about a guy waking up from his tyrannical state, right? It's beautiful. Anyway, so so basically any grown-up can see the tyrannical soul is not worth discussing, right? Okay. So then we get these three other types of souls, right? We get the timocratic soul, the soul of the person who lives for the sake of honor, right? To be honored for achievement, right? Then we have the oligarchic soul, the person who lives for the sake of financial gain of property, right? And we have the aristocratic soul, okay, which is the person who attempts to live a life as dictated by reason, okay, right? Whatever it comes to otherwise, okay. And it's interesting, people don't expect this. Plato and Aristotle do the same thing in Nicomachean Ethics. He's going to evaluate these 3 different lives based on their like the intensity of the pleasure they deliver, right? I mean, he is giving a hedonistic argument of a kind here, okay? But I always tell my students to be careful with this, because we are so debased and carnal, because we are semi-tyrants living in a tyrannical state, right? That when we hear pleasure, we automatically think of like sexual titillation and food and drugs, right?
Right, and just dopamine and whatever.
Okay. We immediately we have this sort of reductively vulgar carnal view of what pleasure is. Okay?
100%.
And the idea here is, but in none of these things, right? The timocratic pleasure, the oligarchic pleasure, and the philosophical pleasure are particularly carnal. Right. Like he's talking about in the timocratic soul, he's talking about the sense of pleasure, non-regrettedness you have in the moment of whoop ass in battle. Right.
Yeah. Like you just conquered your enemies.
Yeah.
That's pleasurable.
That's it. Right. Like you're standing over your opponent who has been knocked unconscious. Right.
And you may have lost a limb. You might be in horrible pain. Right.
It may be. Yeah.
Your brain states might not satisfy Sam Harris's moral landscape. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's at a carnal level, it might be completely distasteful, but in that moment, you are not regretting anything. Right. There is nothing. I think that's the important. There is no regret in this moment.
Got arrows sticking out of you, arms hanging off.
It's being, not becoming, in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's very important for Plato. Okay. Likewise, the oligarch, right? He's made the big deal, man. Like it all came together, right? He successfully maneuvered things to come out with the profit. And in that moment, even though it cost him a great deal, he didn't sleep for weeks as he was crunching the numbers, whatever, right? He doesn't regret being in that moment at all. He is fully there. Like there is that's what we mean by pleasure. Okay. And then likewise, by the pleasure associated with the philosophical soul, it is the pleasure that one comes in the pure moment of contemplative understanding, right? There's a terrible translation of Aristotle's Ethics out there that translates the contemplative life as the life of study, right? It makes it sound like we're talking about doing your homework. No, we're talking about this like transcendent moment of understanding, right? Like I think I get it better the older I get, right? Just the sheer restingness in a moment of getting something.
Of what Lonergan called those eureka moments,
The
right?
eureka moments. Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't necessarily mean like it's my eureka. It could be someone else's eureka, and I'm just finally coming along for the ride. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've got three really, really incredible pleasures here. Okay. Non-carnal, right? Or, less to various degrees carnal. And now the question is, which one's the best pleasure? Okay. Now there's the issue because, like, with the Timocratic one is less stable, right? I mean, you're only going to win so many battles, right? Okay, you're going to get old. It's going to get harder, right? The oligarchic one is less stable, right? The deal doesn't have to go well, okay, and they lend themselves to sliding into the tyrannical state.
Yep.
Okay. Now the philosophical one is the most stable, okay, and you're starting to see like that might make the philosophical life good for its consequences because of its stability, right? Okay. But also, he's going to say it's the best intrinsically, okay? But you've got a problem now, right? That you can only, like, you can't really know what the pleasure of the Timocratic soul is unless you've had a moment of whoop-ass.
Right.
You really can't know it, okay? Nor can you really know what the pleasure of the oligarchic soul is unless you've had a moment of, like, great achievement in sort of, like, earning a living or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay? But likewise, you can't know what the pleasure of the philosophical soul is unless you've had a eureka. Unless you've really gotten there. Okay. And so how do we decide? How can we know which one is the best intrinsically? And Plato says, or Socrates says,
ask the philosopher.
Ask the philosopher, because he's the only one who's probably done all three. Okay.
Right, yeah.
That's why it's important though for Plato, right? That the philosopher, he better have some Timocratic experience, right? He better have fought.
Right.
Okay. Right. Okay. He better have fought. He better have like run a household, things like that. Okay. Or he's, you know what I mean? Okay. He's done these other things. Like, Socrates was a stonemason before he got into this, right? Okay. He was a soldier before he got into this. And so, it's only the philosopher who's probably had a taste of all three pleasures and can give you that qualitative judgment about which one is in fact the highest quality pleasure, right? And he says, we all know the people who have done all three prefer the third one the most, right?
This is true.
So you can see how, now he hasn't made the case yet, but there's where he's building in book 10 to say that the life of justice, the life of reason, the life of the philosopher is in fact the highest, both because of its consequences. It's stable in a way the others aren't, right? And it's like, the most like intense, get off pleasure you can have. Right.
Yeah.
That's the carnalizing.
And just to add another consideration too, it's not like they're completely competitive. Like the philosopher can still go and roll in a BJJ tournament, right?
So I'm going to spend the evening, man.
Yeah, right. But there's a priority there. And there's a proper ordering.
Yeah,
exactly. 100%.
But also, like, look, the BJJ is going to fade in a way that the contemplation may not, right? I mean, certainly I'm going to get old and slow physically and mentally, but there's a greater stability of the contemplative pleasure than there is of the Timocratic pleasure. So Plato and Aristotle say it too, is they're both awesome and they're both constituents of an overall good life, but the best one is the philosophic one.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Good. Okay. Excellent summary. Anything we're missing from
Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to make sure I hit from that.
We have again a revisiting of the tripartite soul in this book, but we've covered that. I do like the parallel with Freud's id, ego, and superego. That's a very interesting catch there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the book 9 stuff makes really clear. There's this whole notion of the passions, the appetites in the tyrannical soul, right? The id, right, are associated with the dream life, okay? And the person run by the id is sort of like lost touch with the distinction between dream and reality and all that. I think it's very clear, right? I mean, but it's not. I'm not saying like Freud, right? Ripped off Plato. This is the Western consciousness, right?
Yeah, but he did.
Yeah, but he did. I suspect somewhere Freud says, "Oh, Plato knew this, right?"
Plato knew this.
Carl Jung certainly makes the connection, right?
Yeah. Let us take a few comments and questions. So some of you have, gentle listeners. Alex said, "Philosophy of the People. I'm catching up with the Republic. I finished books 1 through 4, but have to focus on schoolwork." Yes, of course you do. Be a good student.
Right. Alex, sometimes school gets in the way of your education, but that's just how it is, right?
Yeah, that is the truth. But he says, "But I love the series. For when I get a chance to watch it, and the series inspired me to take a research paper class on the Republic regarding possibly ascetics."
Woo!
Okay,
oh man,
cool, man.
Man after my own heart there. Do it.
Yes. Yeah, we should do a series on aesthetics. And I've been thinking a lot about just beauty and its role. Well, we were just talking about fittingness arguments just in the previous conversation.
Right.
So,
and I see them aesthetically.
Yeah. Brendan checking in. What's up, crew? Here for the live stuff. Well, I'm not seeing too many questions today, guys. So if you don't have anything for us to discuss, then probably just wrap this one up. Come back here with book 10.
Book 10 coming sometime this week.
And then, yeah, we will probably, we could probably get this whole thing wrapped up. Shoot, this week or next, right?
Yeah, let's wrap it this week. Then we can start the new project.
All right. Do we want to? Well, why don't we just finish by teasing that new project, Jim? Yeah.
So
yeah, you tease it.
We have decided to do what prima facie, not necessarily intrinsically, but prima facie looks like the opposite end of the spectrum. And for our next big like philosophy for the people read along, we'll call it, we're going to do Herbert Marcuse's One-Dimensional Man. Right. So we're going to do
two non-Marxists look at Marcuse.
Yeah, exactly. Two non-Marxists look at Marcuse. Right. And, we're going to take the book that is, probably you could say is most, I hate to call it like books responsible for social phenomena, but, most associated with or responsible for the current woke culture in the American university. Like Marcuse, you can see huge elements of what's going on there are derived from Marcuse, right? And this is partly our setting like a good pedagogical example for things that we've pushed on philosophy for the people. Is like, let's read everything, and let's read everything not with like how are we going to like come to with a debunking spirit, but let's just ask ourselves what we can learn from it.
Yeah, right? And this is something we were talking about, behind the scenes. Part of what inspired this was somebody was critiquing, and we'll talk about who that was and what they said once we get into the series, Marcuse. That Jim, it triggered Dr. Jim.
He got
straight up triggered. He's like, look, he's like, I don't, necessarily have,
I mean, like 3 days of Facebook message ranting about this one.
Right. Yeah. So, where the critiques were just, unfair. So it's all about raising the level of discourse and intellectual honesty. Yeah. So I think this will be a good series. It'll be good for me. This is, of course, I have not read this book before. In fact, I just started reading it this morning while going to the bathroom. This will be my bathroom reader for a while.
Nice.
And
I'm not gonna borrow your copy.
Yeah. Well, this is why I always buy books new because I know where I bring my books.
I know what I do with them. Sure.
So if I ever lend you a book, just say no thanks. It's all right.
I'll go ahead and get one.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll probably mark it up. So.
Some questions did come in, so let's take these real quick. Brendan says, "Love the series, but Jim is wearing a Zepp's shirt. Would you rank them as #1 rock band of all time?" Real quick, let me just say, my kids have recently fallen in love with Led Zeppelin. My son was asking, Pat, what is like the most famous rock song of all time? I'm like, probably Stairway to Heaven, right? It's probably that I don't know if that's right, but I'm like, here, let's listen to this one and see what you think. He loved it. So now every time we got in the car for the past week and a half, he's like, can we listen to Stairway to Heaven, Dad? Can we listen to Stairway to Heaven? So
I mean, I think for me, Led Zeppelin, it was the origin, moment of rock and roll, right? It was really it was Zeppelin that really got me into rock. Like
it is, if we can tie it in, it is the form of classic rock and roll.
Yeah. And it was at least like the gateway drug, right? And for me, I went to high school in like the late 80s, early 90s. So it's like Zeppelin wasn't the radio stuff then. And this is before alternative rock really came on, before the grunge thing really came on. And so this was like, like this is something you could have access to that wasn't just like cheesy pop top 40 radio. Right. Yeah. And so Zeppelin was big for me.
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, one of my first guitar instructors, just what we did was just learn Zeppelin tunes, right? That's just, he just refused to teach me anything else but Zeppelin tunes. But I'm very grateful for it, because if you're going to model yourself off of anybody, like Jimmy Page is a great dude, man. And he's a great, phenomenal player.
I'll still turn on Zeppelin too and listen to the whole thing, right? It's still, now I'll say there's a band, Greta Van Fleet, that I like quite a bit.
Yep.
That's something my sons have gotten into big time too. And it's funny, people hate on them because there's so much like Led Zeppelin, right? my thought on that is like, well, guys my age forever have been saying, when are they going to get classic rock back? When am I going to get real rock and roll? And then someone does it and everyone bangs on them for like copying Led Zeppelin. I mean, I don't know, man. This is like they're getting the genre right, man.
Right.
I love them. Yeah.
There was another band that did that. They were called Wolf Mother. And
yes.
You remember that?
Yes,
Those dudes rocked. But
yeah.
Same thing. I'm like, man, these guys sound like classic rock, like good old school AC/DC. Yeah. I loved them, but everyone's like, oh.
Well, they're just doing what Sabbath did. Well, yeah, because it's the genre. It's awesome, right? Exactly. But then like old guys like me will constantly complain. Hey man, like I remember when there used to be real rock on the radio. Well, okay, then someone does it. Why are we complaining?
Yeah. Here's all right, we'll finish with this one. Matt says, any thoughts on Plato taking influence from Moses?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have any thoughts on that. I've certainly it's not impossible. But I actually think I don't, my read on I know where some people kind of go with this sort of thing, but my read on sort of the burning bush is very different from like being in something like Plato and Aristotle. So yeah,
right. I had very little thoughts on that.
I read in the stuff I've read, like goes with it is like the I am, like when the bush says, who are you? You ask the bush, who are you? And the bush says, I am. It's saying, don't ask me my name, boy. Right, not to say I am being itself, right? Yeah, I am what I call myself, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a passage that has obviously sparked enormous debate, and it's come under debate again now that the whole classical theism controversy has sort of been greatly reinvigorated in the literature lately, because people are pointing back to biblical passages. And my take is, like most in the Bible, is that I just think that there's multiple compatible interpretations, right? And I think that's something that we would actually kind of expect of divine revelation, right? So yeah, okay. What do you read?
At least if it took humans to write it down, right? Yeah, there's going to be ambiguities. Yeah.
So let's finish with this, Jim. What are you reading? Anything interesting right now?
What am I reading right now? I have just begun John Salas's lecture course on Merleau-Ponty.
Oh,
very excited about that. Very excited about that. And I'm continuing to work my way through a number of books banned on Amazon, which is,
I love it. We just we'll just create a reading list of banned.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm reading one very good book on Heidegger that was banned on Amazon. So pretty excited about that. Yeah.
Very good. Well, speaking of banned on Amazon, I'm reading a new anthology. It's free open access right now. I'll post it in the comments.
On free speech, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's excellent. Oderberg's a contributor, so I read his awesome essay that he put in there. So relates to your point about the little bit of a censorship problem we got going on here today. So if you want to hear some like good philosophical defenses of free speech and all that sort of thing, I think you'll like this new anthology. Some really good contributors there, and it's free open access, so you have no excuse not to read it.
Yeah, there you go for it. Yeah.
All right, gentle listeners, thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe. We'll catch you next time. Peace.
Rock and roll.